Welcome to another episode of My Takes, That ESG Show. I am Srinath Sridharan. As we all know, education is one of the prime change drivers for societal development. In this aspect, in the Indian government and Indian corporates have been working to build capacity. Today, we have someone very special with us, someone who has been working in creating social inclusion through public policy intervention, especially in the right to education space. In a state which is the most populous one and with various diversified strata of societies, she has enrolled about 2 lakh students under the RTE Act, that's the Right to Education Act. Personally, she's overcome various odds, including social health barriers and, of course, the mighty glass ceiling. Today, she works with governments and private sector and to bring social inclusion at the grassroots level. Meet Samina Bano, the founder and CEO of RightWalk Foundation. Welcome, Samina. Samina, welcome to the show, and wanted to straight away ask you this question. I mean, what prompted you to leave the corporate space that you were very well entrenched in and to jump into social impact space?
Well, it was no moment of epiphany, well, which you generally hear from so many people that something happened and suddenly they had a change of heart and change of mind, and they decided to do something different in social sector, in development sector. There was no moment like that. I had actually decided to enter into development sector when I was a little kid. I was very small. I think I must have been in seventh, eighth standard. And I wanted to become Mother Teresa. I don't know why. I was
Wow.
very impressed by her, and I wanted to become like her. And I used to see a lot of inequality around me, injustice around me, and that would really bother me a lot. And I would keep thinking. I was a very thinking child, right from beginning, and I would contemplate why there are differences, why I'm going to school and this other child is not able to go to school. What would that make a difference in their lives? And coming from my own life experience, which I realized much later, not really during my childhood, but much later, that I too had an experience where this access of education made all the difference in my life. So I come from a very typical Orthodox Muslim family where education was not something people really focused on, and especially girls' education was not really focused on. All of my cousins, they got married off by the time they were 16, 17, max 18. They hardly finished their 10th standard, 8th standard, something like that. And my mother was quite worried, and she was worried whether I will complete my 10th standard or not. But thankfully, the two things happened that changed this entire course. My father got a job in Indian Air Force, and that took him out of his village into cities where, you live in campuses and you have Kendra Vidyalayas and everybody is sending their children to school, and there is a peer pressure. And he thought, I will have to also, send my kids to school. Secondly, when I was kid, I was just 1 year old. I don't remember, but that's what I'm told. I was 1 year old, and I got polio. So I contracted polio, and I have a partial paralysis in my left leg. And our Indian society, something happens to a girl like array paisa, you start saving money, you'll have to give huge dowry just to get her married off, blah blah blah. So those things also started happening, and that also in a way motivated my father to educate me. I was always a bright child, and he thought maybe education could be my way to freedom. So that's how I got an education, and it made all the difference. My current life compared to my cousin's life are poles apart. It's very different. So I knew from the beginnings, I have experienced it, how education can change your life. And I did not want it to leave to the chances entirely. Like, I was lucky enough, I was fortunate to get good quality education, but not everyone is. And I felt that I have been given this opportunity. God has given me this opportunity so that I can spread it out. I can spread it across, and I can go out and provide this opportunity to many more people, many more children. And that's how it all started.
What do you think are, let's say, the social inclusion challenges? I'm sure that it is also a kind of disbelief that individuals will have when you go and tell them, hey, you can study and you can become a collector. I mean, they've never, for them, the hierarchy, the social hierarchy is so high that they fear that, is it possible? And how do you inculcate that sense of belief in them?
Oh, that's a very good question. The biggest hurdle, you can say, to social inclusion is actually here. It's all in the head. We imagine things. It's all myth. rich and poor can't be educated together. They can't be together. The poor will have bad influence on the rich, and poor means automatically it's like the association we have already established in our head. If you're poor, you must be less intelligent, you must be dirty, you must have bad habits, you must be using swear words, and you must be a bad kid. So that's the kind of association we have with poor kids and the poor families and poor people. We first started the project in a smaller, just in Lucknow and in few schools. And when we got initially we had to enforce it. Nobody was ready, so we had to enforce, and we had to fight court cases and all that stuff. That will come to that later, because government was against it, and we had to get some policy, bring about some policy level changes. We had to fight in High Court and Supreme Court, and then we were able to bring about this policy change in Uttar Pradesh at that time. So yes, there was a lot. The resistance was at such level, not only from the parents' side or the government side or from the private school lobby side, that we had to fight it out till Supreme Court and get policy level changes. So once that happened, we enforced it in schools. But when children started going to schools and media started following them, and we had used media very smartly, media sort of played the role of holding government accountable, holding schools accountable, and they were reporting regularly. And when they started reporting on these kids, it's like people observed it's very difficult to differentiate an RTE kid from a non-RTE kid, a poor child from a rich child in a classroom sitting together. They're performing together. Suppose they're in a play and they were all dressed up. And the question was, identify who is a poor child here, who is a rich child here. Nobody could do that. And as far as intelligence is concerned, a rich kid can be intelligent, average, low intelligent. The same distribution that applies on the rich kids, exactly same distribution applies on poor kids as well. Some are intelligent, some are average, some are less intelligent. So you can't pick just one less intelligent child and then generalize it across the population. In fact, just a few years ago, we did one story in Hindustan Times, where in one school, in two classes, class 1 and class 2, where our children had been admitted, all four positions, position 1 and position 2, in both the classes was secured by our RTE kids.
Wow.
Kids who did not have educated parents, like literally Angutha Chha parents who had never gone to school. These kids had absolutely nobody to help them at home in their education. Those kids had beaten the rest of the children in the classroom, and they secured first and second position. It was a news in Hindustan Times, and I will be happy to share that sometime later whenever you want. And that was the moment I was able to demonstrate, look, all of these thoughts in your head are just thoughts, are myths,
or biases, social biases that we adults have.
Yeah, social biases. Nothing stops these children to accomplish same things like your kids can do if given an opportunity.
Sure. So picking on that, I mean, I'm sure you faced a lot of resistance and obstacles when you started the concept of RightWalk Foundation. Even before you probably put it together, there would have been a lot of hurdles. Just what was the main idea or the framework for that? And when would you call it a success? I mean, what is your measure of success?
Well, when I started RightWalk, so I had a lot of thoughts in my mind, what I really wanted to build. And if I'm in education, what is the biggest organization in India? It's Pratham. And Pratham, I really love this organization. They're doing a great job. However, when I saw what number of children they are catering to, they're still like somewhere around 1% of the children across India who are school-going kids, the Pratham organization is able to reach. And if you become as big as Pratham, then you're able to reach 1% of children. So I asked this question to myself, do I want to build another Pratham? Is this my goal? If I build another Pratham, then we will reach together 2% children. That will still not solve the problem. So Pratham's approach is different. They are more innovative. They're creating solutions, but to be able to disseminate those solutions in the larger scale, you required a different method. And I decided at that point, well, this conventional method is not going to happen. This is not going to work. And thankfully, I had never worked in any nonprofit before. So I did not have any preconceived notion or any idea that was already there in my head or that was driving me. So I was like fresh. It was a green field for me in my head also. So I realized I was also working with the government at that time. I actually used 1.5 years to test the waters, to explore the field, to understand something from my own perspective, not heard from anyone else, not read from any book. I first wanted to experience everything firsthand. So I was traveling a lot. I was meeting government. I was going to the districts. I was visiting schools. I was getting every information firsthand, and then I was parallelly also reading a lot of white papers and the books and everything, and corroborating like if everything is agrees with what I'm watching over there. And after having worked with the government, I realized the kind of scale, the kind of machineries that government has, it's unmatched by any nonprofit. It
True.
just cannot happen. But the government does not have the time. They have to do so many things. They do not have the bandwidth to actually get too deep into a certain topic and innovate and implement that innovation. So if these two forces can combine together, I think that's when we will be able to bring about the real change, scale plus innovation. And that was the idea and the framework of RightWalk Foundation. We work very closely with the government. Our idea is to drive equity, inclusion, and social justice by co-shaping public policies and translating them into action. So any public policy, any welfare scheme which is meant to drive equity, inclusion, and social justice, we work with that public policy, and we partner with government, and we help them implement it across the state, not just the implementation, but also setting the systems and processes in such a way that it becomes independent of us, say in 5 years. So 5 years, we
Okay.
work very closely with the government. And in 5 years, we step back, we exit, and the policy has to continue it. And it should be impacting lakhs and lakhs of hundreds and thousands of children and youth year on year without any extra intervention from our side.
Corporate India is a critical stakeholder as well. While a lot of them have compassion and write a check in the name of CSR,
Mhm.
how do we bring about passion in corporate India space as well? There are hardly very few companies, good companies, where they also allow their employees to volunteer. Some of these companies actually pay those employees, and it is in that paid time or paid holiday that these employees volunteer. It is not just out of their own pocket. And there are very far and few in this. So compassion they have definitely for sure. Most of them also reflects on their annual reports, the way they write their involvement. But how do we drive compassion and passion together?
I would like to show to the corporate something which whenever I'm speaking with them, I feel like it's not that clearly visible to them. And I think I should mention it. I should hear. So it's. I know we all are driven by passion, and it really drives us. The compassion drives us when we see a poor kid and we want to help that kid. So we give them, say, food or give them education or whatever we give them, and I feel very nice. But development sector doesn't work like that every day. A lot of people who try to come and work with me, they have this expectation that every day we will be meeting poor children and we'll be giving them something. There will be a lot of emotional drama, and we'll be crying and we'll be happy, and it will be nice every day, and we must be feeling so nice every day, and it must be satisfaction of working on these things. Let me tell you the truth, it doesn't work like that. That's not something which happens every day, and not all work can be so direct that you can see the impact right in the beginning and right in the face of it. So RTE was something which was like much easier to sell. Even in the corporate, I had difficult time selling RTE. I did not receive a single CSR for RTE project, but for other projects. So, and for when I was explaining RTE project, I received the response, that sounds really good. You did a great job, amazing feat. But by the way, do you also run a learning center for poor kids under any bridge or something like that? Do you have a learning center that we can fund? So the simplicity, the corporate looks for simplicity, a simple thing, find some poor children, start a school and start teaching them, and then we'll fund something like that. So I think I strongly believe that corporate has to move beyond that thinking. When you are trying to bring about change at a much bigger level, it cannot happen just by running some physical structures which is visible and where you see, and because the impact will be very short-lived and impact will not be large scale. So corporate has huge potential to support development sector. Now they are coming around, they're understanding slowly, but I think there is a learning curve, and I would really, really hope that corporate can see the value in large scale changes, which will require some level of policy level work, will require some advocacy, then some governance improvement, and the impact will not be directly visible to you at that point of time, but in due course of time, ultimately that's what is leading to the final result. So if you're a corporate, if you're say any company, FMCG company, you're selling your product. I have worked in FMCG company before, so I'm giving this example. So you're selling your product, but and they call it moment of truth when you actually sell a product. But before that, to be able to accomplish that moment of truth, you have to do so many things. You have to do your marketing, you have to do your
Right.
advertising, you have to create your research and the product plan and blah blah blah, all of that stuff that you do to ultimately lead to that moment of truth. But when you come to development sector, you're only asking for moment of truth, that show me a poor child who I can feed. That to be able to go to that, reach that moment of truth, even we have to do a lot of things. We also have to build an organization and work on a lot of other processes. I think if corporate can start supporting development organizations in those processes as well, which may not really be direct, which is connected to moment of truth, but you may not be able to see direct connection or directly leading to the moment of truth. Even those are very important, and I think if to start seeing them, and corporate also, it's not like in development sector, we also function like pretty much a corporate office. We have all those functions. We are not a laid back organizations. We have to pretty much take care of everything from our operations, finance, marketing, communication. Everything has to be managed just like a corporate does. And in fact, coming from the corporate, coming from a business school, I try to manage everything as professionally as possible. And here we're not even receiving any revenue. I also have to do fundraising. So in fact, we are running kind of two businesses at the same time. So it's challenging. It's not a laid back kind of operations that we are doing over here. And we really, really appreciate corporates coming and supporting development sector organizations in accomplishing their goals. But let's try to move a little bit on the other side of the moment of truth and support the overall organization as a whole, so that they can bring about change at much larger scale. And you have not just one moment of truth, you have multiple large scale moment of truths.
Thank you, Samina, for sharing your story, your experiences, and more specifically talking about the challenges and the solutioning you brought about to creating social change. We wish you all the very best for further impact, and we need more of you and more of your cohort in this space. Well, that's the end of this episode of My Takes That ESG Show. You can subscribe to this show on My Takes YouTube handle and other social media networks. Next week, we shall have another guest who will talk to us about what ESG means to India. Thank you. Stay safe.